142nd session of Legal Empowerment through Interaction Lecture Series. This and tomorrow's lecture, we should be thanking Justice M. Venkata Ramana sir for igniting the thoughts and debates in the last session when he touched upon the topic, the concepts of burden of proof. Today, one portion of the debate that we started last time, we'll be taking forward, and that would be, it is in fact nuances of sections 107 and 108 of the Indian Evidence Act with its interplay on section 34 of the Specific Relief Act. We have a wonderful speaker today, Sri Virupaksha D. Gowda sir. He is a former district and session judge and an advocate of the High Court of Andhra Pradesh. And to introduce the subject, we have Justice Siddharama Murthy sir, who is part and parcel of this platform, a family member. Sir, welcome back. It has been a long time. We really missed you, sir. And we are blessed by the presence of Justice V. Ramkumar, Justice Ramakrishnan sir, and all of you wonderful participants who have been in this journey of discovery, enlightenment, and interaction. So over to you directly, Murthy sir, for introduction of the topic.
Good afternoon. My pranams to all elders and good wishes to all youngsters. It's indeed my pleasure to introduce the topic nuances of sections 107 and 198 of the Indian Evidence Act and their interplay with section 34 of the Specific Relief Act, on which my good friend, Judge Advocate Sri Virupaksha Gowda is addressing us. He co-chaired some sessions with me when we interacted with district judicial officers in the states. He is a highly learned, humble, resource person. He has rich experience both at the bar and on the bench. I am glad that he has been chosen to address us on this topic. Coming to the topic, when we think of a provision dealing with burden of proof, our attention immediately focuses upon section 3 of the Indian Evidence Act, which also deals with proved, disproved, and not proved. And also the following. Firstly, distinction between onus of proof and burden of proof, as laid down very well in Raghavamma's case, 1964 Supreme Court 136 AIR. Secondly, standards of proof in civil cases and criminal cases, preponderance of probability and proof beyond reasonable doubt. Thirdly, cardinal principles of civil jurisprudence and cardinal principles of criminal jurisprudence. Fourthly, presumptions. Fifthly, admissions, confessions, and opinions. Sixthly, admissibility, relevancy, and proof. Seventhly, production of evidence at trial and effect of evidence. Eighthly, improper admission and rejection of evidence. Ninthly, appreciation and evaluation of evidence. And in the end, drawing curtains on the controversy, having regard to the evidence that is adduced. One curious thing I noticed during my long years of experience is that very rarely the defense contends that a particular fact is disproved. Always a contention will be a fact is not proved. A fact and issue is not proved. But very rarely we find contentions that the defense has disproved a fact, which is sought to be proved by the plaintiff or the appellant to the case, as the case may be. Today, Mr. Virupaksha Dattadre Gaud will be addressing on us particularly on 107 and 108. The two provisions deal with presumptions regarding continuation of life, and also when the question is whether a man is alive or dead, and if it is proved that he was not heard of for a period of 7 years by those persons who would have naturally have heard of him had he been alive, the burden of proving that he is alive shifts to the other person who asserts that that person is alive. So there appears to be a apparent contradiction in these two provisions, but when we closely read, we find that the latter section is a proviso
Video start cheyalanta.
To the former section.
There is some distraction.
So section 108 is a proviso to the preceding section. So under the preceding section 107, a man is shown to be alive within a period of 30 days. It is presumed that he continues to be alive. But the presumption is superseded by another presumption under the latter section, and the presumption is that he is dead when such person is not heard of for a period of 7 years by those persons who would have heard naturally had he been alive. So these are the two provisions. Then the interplay with section 34, whether a declaration can be sought based on the presumption in the latter provision saying that a particular man who is unheard of for a period of more than 7 years must be presumed to be dead, so that the other consequences under law, either succession or other like consequences would follow or not. This is broadly, I think, the meaning of the word employed there, interplay with section 34 of the Specific Relief Act. So this is going to be a wonderful session. I think we'll have a detailed discussion at the end of the session on the topic. I am sure that after the guest speaker enlightens us on the topic, he will not leave anything for discussion. He will make everything crystal clear. With these few words, I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to introduce the topic as well as say a few words about my good friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Sitarama Murthy, sir. We also recognize the presence of Justice P.S. Narayana. Welcome, sir. And directly over to Virupaksha D. Gowda, sir, for the presentation.
Namaskar, Milad.
Sir, you'll have to unmute. Narayan, sir, you'll have to unmute. Yes.
Namaskar, Milad. Sitaramurthy here.
Oh, fine, Sitaramurthy. Fine.
Good afternoon.
Very nice, that's good. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable presence. Over to you, Virupaksha,
Yes.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shyam Padman. My Lords, Honorable Justice P.S. Narayana Garu, Honorable Justice Ravi Kumar Garu, Honorable Justice Ramkrishnan Garu, and my mentor, Honorable Sitaramurthy Garu. It may not be a mere coincidence that we are together today. After my retirement, when Justice Sitaramurthy Garu was conducting a workshop for district judicial officers, he gave me an opportunity to be a resource person, and that way I started speaking at workshops. And today, the presence of His Lordship is of immense courage to me, so that anything left out, anything not covered properly, my Lord would correct me. And I recall my training days at National Judicial Academy, where we had a wonderful lectures by Justice V. Ravi Kumar Garu. His questionnaire on criminal appeals and criminal revisions, they are always on my table, so that I can share my whatever information I have with my junior friends. Thank you, Mr. Shyam Padman. It was a pleasure. I really thank my good friend and my Lord Justice M.V. Ramana Garu for introducing me to this group. Today, the subject of Section 107 and 108 Evidence Act, usually when we read more and more, we get more and more clarity. But these 4 days, when I started reading with focus, I got more confusions rather than clarity. And I really wonder, as one of the judges said, whether this 108 would really serve any purpose when the actual date of death is relevant for adjudication of disputes. It is said that the disappearance of a person leaving no trace behind gives rise to curious and baffling problems in various branches of the law. On the lighter side, we have a news story of one Donald Miller, who at the age of 61 years disappeared from his house, and the authorities tried to track him down because he was due in a huge amount towards child support of his children. And since he was not traced, he was declared dead in 1994. And suddenly, in 2005, he appears before a court and he claims that he is alive and he wants the order to be set aside. But the judge pleads inability and says that the limitation for rescinding the order is only 3 years and that he is helpless. So, my lord, this subject is very curious and really baffling. And Mr. Shyam Padman wanted me to consider what is the history and origin of this rule of 7 years, whether there is any basis in law. Now, my lord, Justice V. Ram Subramaniam, while at Hyderabad, has rendered a judgment in 2017 through 3 Andhra legal decisions, 285, wherein a deceased person, a person who was in service, was found missing, and the heirs wanted some relief from the court. In that connection, his lordship has narrated the entire origin of this rule. The precise origin of this rule in the Western world is difficult to predict. It appears that the necessity for this rule was felt for the first time when sailors who went on long voyages on the seas returned home after several years only to find their wives remarried to other men. This led to complaints of bigamy. Therefore, this rule was first set out in statutory form in Section 1 of the English Bigamy Act of 1603, which provided a defense to a charge of bigamy if either of those who were charged marry a second time and the first spouse have been beyond the seas for 7 years, or those whose spouse have been absent for 7 years, although not beyond the seas. This 7-year rule under the English Bigamy Act was later incorporated in the English Sestiki Act 1666 and later adopted in the Life Estates Act 1690. His lordship has narrated how the law originated in Australia, Scotland, England, etc. And ultimately, his lordship holds that this rule was prevalent in India since centuries. And his lordship quotes Narada Smriti and Manusmriti, Gautama, Vasishtha, etc., where it is pointed out that a woman, before when she finds that her husband has not returned, she has to wait for a particular number of years before she can contract a second marriage. And the lawmakers took care to see that when there are children, the time period was greater. And similarly, when the husband was alive, known to be alive, the waiting period was more than double. So the presumption of death has been in existence since time immemorial, at least in India. Now, the basis for Section 107 is the presumption of life. Continuity is frequently said to be a subject of presumption. When a relation or condition of things is proved to have existed at a certain time, its continuance is presumed until the contrary is shown. This principle has been applied in terminology at least to agency, domicile, residence, non-residence, season, infancy, sanity or insanity, coverture, partnership, etc. So also it was laid down in an early English case, later followed by high authority, that a person once shown to be living is presumed to be alive for any reasonable period until his death is proved. In fact, in Indian Evidence Act, there are other provisions where this principle of continuity is adopted. The basis for Section 108 has been engrafted with an avowed object of raising a presumption about fictional death if the said fact is called into question for resolving the disputes relating to inheritance, devolution, conferment of certain benefits which are available as a matter of right, where enforcement of a right is dependent on the enforcement of the fact of death, physical or otherwise. The concept of not heard of is better explained when it is said that if no reliable information concerning him is received. Conversely, it is clear that the mere fact that a person has not been heard of is not sufficient if news of him could have been obtained by the exercise of reasonable diligence. In other words, evidence must be produced to justify the inference that the death of the absentee is the probable reason why nothing is known about him. When we speak of, about section 107 and 108, in the same judgment, Justice Ram Subramaniam Garu has explained the concept of burden of proof, and it is said that the burden of proof oscillates like a pendulum from the person who asserts death to the person who asserts life. To put it differently, the burden of proof cast under section 107 upon the person asserting death of another becomes lighter under section 108, while a person asserting death of another is obliged to prove positively under section 107 that the other person is dead. He is given an option or gateway under section 108 to prove instead that the other person has not been heard of for 7 years. In other words, the requirement under 107 is to prove the factum of death. The requirement under 108 is to prove a fact that would lead to a presumption of such a fact. The presumption under section 108, as in the case of every other presumption, is rebuttable, since a person asserting life is entitled under 108 to show that the person presumed to be dead was actually alive. My lords, it is now accepted that section 108 is an exception or a proviso to section 107. It therefore goes without saying that both section 107 and 108 cannot be applied to the same case. When once 108 operates, 107 fades into insignificance. In one case of Kerala, AR 1955, Kerala 129 full bench, where a woman claimed some certain rights on the ground that her missing husband is presumed to be dead. The law required that she should establish that her husband was alive on 3 distinct dates. On the date of the death of her grandmother, on the date of etc. etc. In that case, the two judges differed with regard to the result. One of them said that it is the defendant who has to prove that the person was dead. And the other judge said that the plaintiff has to prove that he was alive. In view of the difference, the matter was referred to the third judge, and it was pointed out that the fallacy of one of the judges is that he applied both section 107 and 108 to the same facts, and that could not have been done. Therefore, 108 is a proviso to section 107. But when someone takes upon the task of establishing the presumption under 108, the opposite party may, because it is a rebuttable presumption, the rebuttal may proceed generally along broad lines, seeking always to establish facts inconsistent with the existence of the presumption of death as a logical conclusion. Such evidence usually centers upon an attempt to explain the absence, to probe the motives of the absentee, to explain that this was a departure from home. In the case referred to by me initially, because he was burdened with huge amount of child support, he had no other go. He went into hiding. That such motives, if explained by the opponent party, the presumption under 108 gets weakened. Now the law is well settled that the most that can be said under 108 is that there is a presumption of death, and that the date and time of death is not a matter of presumption. The classic case is Lalchand Marwari versus Ramroop Gill, AR 1926, Privy Council, page 9. Their lordships have said that it is constantly assumed, not perhaps unnaturally, that where the period of disappearance exceeds 7 years, death which cannot be presumed at any time during the period of 7 years may be presumed to have taken place at its close. This, of course, is not so. If a person has not been heard of for 7 years, there is a presumption of law that he is dead. But at what time within that period he died is not a matter of presumption, but of evidence. And the onus of proving that the death took place at any particular time within the 7-year period lies upon the person who claims a right to the establishment of which that fact is essential. But though the date of death and time of death cannot be ascertained, cannot be fixed on the basis of presumption, at least we should have consistency. When, at what point the presumption of death can be raised? Can it be said that when one person goes missing and 7 years have elapsed, can it be said that we could raise the presumption at the starting point when he went missing, or at the end of 7 years, or when the dispute arose, or when the list reached the court? There is so much inconsistency on this aspect. One thing is certain, that no presumption can be drawn that it was at the beginning of the period. However, there are 1 or 2 judgments where the lordships of Kerala High Court and Andhra Pradesh High Court have held that the date of giving pensionary benefits have to relate back to the date from which the employee was missing. In one judgment of Kerala High Court, Indira versus Union of India, 2005, 3 KLT 1071, and another judgment of Justice Seshadri Naidu of Andhra Pradesh High Court, they have given such benefit. But they do not appear to be in line with the judgment of the Supreme Court or the settled case law. In the case of LIC versus Anuradha, their Lordship Supreme Court have said that the question of drawing a presumption that the person died at the beginning of the period cannot be countenanced. In the several judgments, this point has been covered. I will just make a. It has been held in AR 1967 Orissa, page 70, that the presumption under 108 is available at the point of time when the party approaches the court for necessary relief. In some cases, it was observed that there is also no presumption that on the close of 7 years, death has occurred. In this connection, reference may be made to AR 1962 Orissa, page 3, and AR 1953 Travancore and Cochin 114, in which it was held that where there is a dispute in a suit as to the date of death of a person not heard of for 7 years, in the absence of any evidence of either side, the court should draw a presumption that he was dead on the date of the suit. The same view has also been taken by the Calcutta High Court and Andhra Pradesh High Court in AR 1957 AP 380, in which it was ruled that death can be presumed to have occurred on the date on which the suit was filed. It may be presumed that the man is not alive by the date of the institution of the suit, but the presumption cannot be that he is dead on the date. To the same effect are the observations made in AR 1958 Madras 463 and another judgment of Gujarat High Court. In one of the judgments, Justice Ramasubramanian says that since the statute confines itself only to the factum of death and leaves it largely to the imagination of the courts to find out from the evidence on record the actual date of death, some courts have taken the view that the person must be taken to be dead with effect from the date on which he is not heard of, but some courts have taken the view that in the absence of any evidence to the contrary, the date of death could be fixed only from the expiry of period of 7 years. In this connection, Justice Ramasubramanian has pointed out that there is an inherent danger in making an inference that the death took place at the beginning of the period. In a judgment of Madras High Court 2016, 1 CTC 698, as Managing Director, State Express Transport Corporation, Tamil Nadu Limited versus E. Tamilarasi, and which is reiterated in Union of India versus Polimetla Mary Sarojini, there is an inherent danger in presuming that the date from which a person went missing could be taken to be the date of death, and that if it is so taken, many claims that could be made by his legal heirs would become barred by time, despite the fact that the very presumption of death could be raised only after 7 years from the date on which he was last heard of. My lords, on the other side, the presumption, the inherent difficulties in raising a presumption that the presumption on the date of suit is also taken note of in one judgment of Karnataka High Court. There, the facts in brief are that in 1950, a Hindu woman adopted the plaintiff to her husband, assuming that her husband is dead as he was missing, and after the adoption, the plaintiff filed a suit claiming property, and his claim as the adopted son of was negative, as the court was of the opinion that he had not satisfactorily established that Ayyappa was dead on the date of his adoption. Lord, in view of this judgment, the woman adopted the same person once again on 15/8/1955. Then the plaintiff brought another suit, and both the courts have held that the factum of adoption is proved. The trial court decreed this suit, but the appellate court held that though Ayyappa was not heard of for 20 years prior to the adoption, the only presumption that could be drawn under 108 is that the person whose death is in issue is presumed to have died on the date of the suit. This presumption, according to the first appellate court, is not sufficient to prove that Ayyappa was dead on the date of adoption. When the matter reached the Karnataka High Court, Mysore High Court, the learned judges in AAR 1963 Mysore 115, they opined that the relevant point of time at which the presumption under 108 is available when the factum of the death of the person concerned becomes material. In the present case, the question whether Ayyappa was alive or dead became material in 1955 when the adoption took place. If Ayyappa had not been heard of by persons who should have heard of him, he was alive for 7 years prior to 15/8/1955, then the presumption would be that he was dead on or before 15/8/1955. The learned judges pointed out that if the contention that the relevant date is the date of the suit is accepted, that would lead to considerable difficulties. If that should be held to be the true view of the law, then there can be no question of any valid adoption by a lady whose husband's whereabouts are not known for years together, even though he was not heard of for more than 7 years. The difficulty would be all the more in the case of second marriages. If the husband or wife is not heard of for more than 7 years by those who should have heard of him or her, he or she could not marry again, because the law would only presume that that person is dead on the date of the suit. Thus, there is a difficulty in presuming that the death took place at the beginning of the missing period. Similar difficulties are there when a presumption is that the death took place on the date of suit. So the plausible explanation should be that when the relevant material at the relevant time the question arose, that should be the point at which the presumption is to be drawn. My Lord, we have cases, the cases in which this question of section 107 and 108 are arising in matters relating to succession and other things. But mostly, many cases pertaining to service disputes are reported, wherein this question of this presumption under 108 is sought to be drawn. When an employee absents from his office, the employer often terminates the service on the ground of unauthorized absence and declares such employee ineligible for service benefits. However, when the dependents invoke section 108, the situation changes when the presumption of death of such a person becomes available under 108. In other words, if a person is dismissed from service and is not traced out in 7 years, then section 108 takes over and all consequential actions would follow. In other words, presumption of death thereafter supersedes the finding of the employee being a deserter and the consequential order of dismissal from service. Now, having realized, my lords, that invoking section 108 and waiting for a period of 7 years and then applying the benefits to the dependents of the deceased employees would work hardship to the dependents, the government of India has issued a circular of 3rd March 1989, which says that when an employee disappears leaving his family, the family can be paid in the first instance the amount of salary due, leave encashment due, and the amount of GPF having regard to the nomination made by the employee. And after the lapse of period of 1 year, other benefits like retirement or death gratuity, family pension may also be granted to the family, subject to the fulfillment of conditions prescribed in the succeeding paragraphs. There, my lords, they have stipulated that some undertaking should be obtained from the dependent members. However, this circular is stated that it will not apply. It will apply only to genuine cases of disappearance under normal circumstances, and not cases in which officials disappear of committing frauds. But though the government has made such a provision for to ensure the welfare of the dependents of the missing employee, we in the law courts, we have not been able to give any benefit, give any help to the persons. But not the insistence on the once a person is missing, the property which stands in his name, the other rights and liabilities of the missing person, someone will have to take care of those rights and liabilities, unless the authorities also insist on production of a death certificate. So, waiting for a period of 7 long years, to raise a presumption of death is causing a real difficulty. In one case, where the woman, one of the dependent members of the family went up to the matter went up to the Supreme Court, and when the question of compassionate appointment was raised, their lordship said, no, compassionate appointment can be considered only when the family is in dire necessity. After a long lapse of 12 years, 10 or 12 years, this question loses significance. It is not her making that she had to wait for such a long time. The law requires her to wait so long. So something needs to be done in this regard. So, my lords, the judges have explained that section 108 is not exhaustive. It is not necessary that one should necessarily have recourse to section 108. There may be a certain situation when, though a claim for appointment and compassionate ground may be made after 7 years, but the death is capable of being proved on a particular date within the set period. For example, if it is established that a person lost his life in a road, water or air accident, or in a tragedy resulting from outbreak of fire or the like, and the dead body is not recovered, in that event, after the expiry of the period of 7 years, the date of death may be presumed to be the date of accident or the tragedy. In such cases, there are hardly any chances of manipulations, as may be done in the case of a presumptive death drawn on the basis that a person was missing for the last 7 years. Section 108 is not exhaustive on the question of presumptions regarding death of a person. The court may make a suitable presumption in accordance with the circumstances of each case, as laid down in AR 1964 Allahabad 310, and another judgment AR 1927 Allahabad 687, Badal versus Saraswati. It is said that independently of section 108, they were entitled to draw an inference of fact under section 114. Section 108 provides that in certain circumstances, a rebuttable presumption of law arises as to death. It does not follow that if those circumstances do not exist, there cannot be a presumption or inference of fact under 114 as to death. Now, my lords, where the rights and liabilities are to be adjudicated upon basing on the date of death, section 108 is of really no use. The party may as well make an effort to prove the to prove circumstances which entitle the court to raise a presumption under section 114 that the man is no more. Because by waiting for 7 years and by invoking section 108, the purpose is not solved when it is not able to establish the date of death. Now, there is often said that what if the missing person comes back? Sometimes doubts are expressed in case a person comes back alive after 7 years. The situation will be anomalous. It is for the court to raise a presumption on unfounded ground. It is not for a court to raise presumption on unfounded ground. Provisions contained in 107 and 108 read with 56 of Indian Evidence Act deal with public interest and for welfare of people. Any presumption drawn which go against the spirit of section 107 and 108 shall not be correct. Ordinarily, in case it is found that a person is missing for more than 7 years, then the statutory provisions under 107 and 108 should be given effect. The right flowing from the statutory provisions may not be taken away on a presumption based on unfounded ground. What will happen in due course of time, in case statutory provision is implemented, affects adversely should be looked into by the legislature and not by the courts. My lords, in AR 1963 Madras 115, 1963 Mysore 115, having considered the difficulties with regard to section 107 and 108, their lordships have said that I should like to mention that under the, this was in 1963, I should like to mention that under the changed circumstances, the continuance of section 107 would be a source of immense troubles. We are in an age of aeroplane and Sputniks. Death in unknown places and under identifiable circumstances is a matter of everyday occurrence. That being so, section 107 would work to the detriment of the heirs of the deceased. Hence, it might be advisable to delete that provision. My lords, it is high time, my lord, that a legislation may be brought something on the lines of Presumption of Death Act 2013 of England, where the court, the competent authority is entitled to declare, is also duty bound to declare the date of death. And it is also necessary to ensure that the limitation aspect is taken care of, so that the time spent in getting a declaration based on presumption is excluded while computing the limitation. Lords, all this much with regard to 107 and 108. Before I go to suit for declaration of civil death in the case of a missing person. Shall I continue and conclude that portion also? Obliged. On the last occasion, my lord, there was a discussion that a suit for declaration may not be maintainable. In this regard, I have checked up certain cases, and the earliest case is Gina Gladys Fremantle versus Herbert Charles Fremantle of Bombay High Court, 1950, 52 Bombay Law Reporter 641. This is a suit filed by a wife against her husband for a declaration that the defendant, not having been heard of since February 37, may be declared as dead. Lord, His Lordship observes that it is a suit for declaration, and it cannot be entertained unless it falls within the scope of the old section 42 of the Specific Relief Act. That section inter alia provides that any person entitled to any legal character may institute a suit against any person denying or interested to deny his title to such character for a declaration that he is so entitled. The declaration sought in this suit is not a declaration of such a kind. The plaintiff does not claim to be entitled to any legal character, nor can it be said that there is any person denying or interested to deny such character, because the plaintiff herself says that the plaintiff believes that the defendant is dead. Section 42, in my opinion, postulates the existence of a defendant who denies or is interested to deny the legal character. Therefore, His Lordship has said that there is no procedure that is known whereby she can obtain the relief she claims. In another judgment of Calcutta High Court, Narayan Naik versus SBI, 2002, 3 LLJ 1013. It is said that no suit lies for a declaration that a person not having been heard of for 7 years was deemed to be dead, unless, but here it is made clear that if the suitor seeks to establish that he is entitled to any legal character or to any right as to any property, inasmuch as a suit for declaration can be maintained only within the scope and ambit of 34, Section 34 does not sanction every form of declaration. It sanctions only a declaration that the plaintiff is entitled to specific legal character or to any right as to property. In other words, the meaning of the section is that any person who has a right to any legal character, status, or to any property may bring the declaratory action against anyone who actually denies or has some interest on behalf of the other to deny his title to such character or his right to any such property. In this case, as observed earlier, by conduct, the respondents have made payments. In another judgment of Calcutta High Court, Devokali Koyar Kedarnath, Section 42 does not sanction every form of declaration, but only a declaration that the plaintiff is entitled to any legal character or to any right as to any property. It is said that a declaratory decree does not create any new right, but only declares in favor of plaintiff what was his right before, and a person who is entitled to any legal character may bring a suit for declaration of that legal character. However, in the present suit for declaration of civil death, plaintiff has filed his suit for declaration of status of another person, meaning thereby X has filed a suit for declaration of status of Y, in which in the considered opinion of this court is not covered within the purview of 34 of Specific Relief Act. In another judgment of Karnataka High Court, Venkatamma alias Venkamma, and suits of this nature are usually filed, my lord, without showing anyone as defendants versus nil. A suit seeking a declaration that a person is dead was not an appropriate relief that could have been countenanced. A rule of evidence under 108 clearly spells out that when the question is whether a man is alive or dead, and if it is proved that he has not been heard of for 7 years by those who naturally have heard of him, the burden of proving that he is alive is shifted to the person who affirms it. Therefore, it follows that if a man is unheard of for more than 7 years, the presumption is he is dead. This is a presumption in law. Therefore, there was no warrant for the court to declare that a man is dead. In other words, it was possible for the man to walk into the court and declare that he is alive. In such a situation, unless the judgment and decree is set aside, the man is construed to be dead in the eye of law, though he is alive. Therefore, on principle, such a declaration ought not to be granted. That is the reason why the law has left the question open, and there could be only a presumption subject to prove that a person is either dead or alive. But, my lords, the courts have taken a view that the person can make a claim for his legal character consequent on the death of a missing person, presumption of death of a missing person. In one judgment of Madras High Court 1997, 1 MLJ 181, Balambal versus Kannamma, the plaintiff has filed the suit in question for a declaration of the civil death of the plaintiff's only son and consequential direction that the plaintiff, being the only heir of her son, is the absolute owner of the suit properties. Both the relief of declaration as well as consequential declaration of civil death as well as the declaration of title have been sought for. Learned trial judge by judgment decreed the suit. Learned judge dealing with this appeal at the time of admission considered that the appeal involved consideration of 3 substantial questions of law as to whether the suit as framed was maintainable in law, seeking a declaration that a person is civilly dead on the ground that he was not heard of for 7 years, and more so without consequential relief. In my view, dehours the tenability or otherwise of such a submission. The relief sought for in this case, at any rate, does not suffer any such infirmity. The relief claimed is not simply seeker for a declaration about the civil death of Ramalingam. Though the belief of declaration of the right of the plaintiff as heir to the deceased son was sought for as a consequence, a reading of the case projected in the plaintiff would go to show that the very object of the declaration is only to have the substantive relief of declaration that the plaintiff is the only heir of her son, and as such the absolute owner of suit properties, which constitute the main and substantial relief, and declaration of civil death being almost merely incidental, and the language employed being the word consequential, does not in any manner detract from the declaration of property rights of the plaintiff, being the main and substantial relief. Viewed thus, the challenge made to the nature of relief sought for and granted does not in any manner suffer from the infirmities sought to be attributed on behalf of the appellant. Lord, in another case, there was a suit for partition. The plaintiff did not seek any declaration of the civil death. There, the court dismissed the claim on the ground that declaration is sought. It is of Calcutta High Court, Pranab Das versus Gopal Das. The plaintiff's suit for partition was dismissed on contest by holding inter alia that the suit is a premature one, as the plaintiff has not been able to prove the death of his father, through whom he is claiming title by inheritance. Learned trial court held that neither any death certificate has been produced to prove the death of his father, nor the civil death of father has been pleaded and proved by the plaintiff in the suit. When the matter reached the appellate court, if conditions relating to drawing of such presumption relating to civil death are satisfied as per the provisions of Evidence Act, then the court can draw presumption relating to the death of such person in a suit for partition, even if no such declaration is sought for in the suit specifically. Prayer for declaration relating to the title is inbuilt in the partition suit, and the dispute relating to the title cannot be resolved without the dispute relating to the death of Dulal Babu being resolved in the suit, particularly when the title of Dulal Babu is admitted by the defendants. As such, we hold that the suit cannot fail for want of relief being prayed for by way of declaration relating to the civil death of Dulal Babu. Hence, my lord, to conclude, a suit seeking a relief that someone may be declared as dead as he has not been heard of for more than 7 years cannot be entertained, and such a declaration cannot be given in law, as it is the rule of evidence and not a substantive right of a person. However, a person can claim any substantive right if it accrues to him on the death of a person by showing that the person has not been heard of for last 7 years, and therefore by presuming his death, such substantive right may be given to him. The plaintiff could have asked for a declaration as to her status, that she is a widow, by proving that her husband be presumed to be dead by virtue of this rule of evidence. Lords, this is my small attempt to explain the nuances of section 107 and 108.
Sir, like Justice Sitharamamurthy sir started off in the inaugural, when he introduced, there is nothing much or more to be, clarified. But still, I think the platform would be very much looking forward to have interaction with you, sir. And may I just request Sitharamamurthy sir to offer the valuable comments regarding the presentation.
Excellent presentation. I said that there is nothing for discussion, but that will have some discussion so that will be further enriched. When I read the provisions and I also heard the lecture, one thing was clear to me, subject to what you all say. Regarding date of death presumption, there are two categories of cases. One category of cases, date of death need not be presumed at all. Date of death becomes irrelevant. Like for a compassionate appointment, death of the employee is sufficient, date of death may not be relevant. If the person who died, who is presumed to be dead, whose death is in question, mortgaged his property, his legal heir wants to redeem the property, presumption of death is sufficient, date may not be relevant. Like a person holding separate property, he is missing, his death is in question. All his legal heirs, wife and children are alive. No deaths occurred in the family during the period he was missing. So the shares are certain. So on his death, presumption of death is enough. Date of death may not be relevant. It need not be presumed. So these are one categories of cases. The another category is the date of death is relevant for the cause of action. So in such cases, the presumption may be necessary. So this is how we can classify the cases into two categories, where the date of death is relevant, where the date of death need not be proved, subject to what you all say. Secondly, regarding declaratory suits, there are conflicting views, no doubt. But the law appears to be that when there is a legal right attached to the presumption, a declaration can be sought, if not for presuming death, but for claiming the right, but for claiming the legal right. This is my opinion in the matter. And one more aspect is that so far as certain things, the presumption, play of presumption is not necessary. Like death in case of accidents, the dead body is not required. Like railway accidents,
Yes, yes.
only the wearing apparel and some contents of the pant pocket or the shirt pocket are recovered. Then after identifying the same, then the family members say that the person died must have been their family member. In such cases, there is no play of presumption. They can straight away claim on the basis of the evidence available that the present person is dead, and then they can take advantage of the legal position. This is my humble view, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Justice Sridharam Murthy, sir. Over to you, Justice Ramkumar, sir.
Very good articulation. In fact, every contours of the two sections, I think, have been explored by the speaker as well as Justice Sridharam Murthy. In fact, as you rightly said, in cases of accidents where there is no survivor, but at the same time the dead body is not obtained, why go to section 107 or why go to under section 108? Why not have a presumption under section 114 as held by the Allahabad High Court? I think that will be the better option. And in a case where 108 has been applied, is there any scope for application of 107? I have my own doubts.
That is what in AR 1955 Kerala, my lord.
Yes.
It is said that once 108 applies, 107 cannot be.
But can you say that as a proposition of law?
The burden shifts to the law.
Yes. No, without the application of 107, straight away 108 is applied and he is not heard of. But then if somebody says he was heard of, he was alive in last 30 years, you are virtually applying a sort of reverse burden.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Very rightly said. It is only for the orders of proof. The person accepting that he is alive must prove that he is not dead.
Yes. So,
very rightly said, sir.
And as you rightly said, in service matters, if the family is able to tide over the crisis, then you can't wait for 7 years for compassionate employment, as observed by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
That is the correct view. But there may be cases where the family is not able to tide over the loss. At the same time, they are in a total chaos as to what should be done. And there can be, according to me, there can be cases where a declaratory suit may lie if the former view regarding adverse possession was that you can't file a suit for adverse possession, it can be used only as a shield, not as a sword. That position has changed. Now, without proving the investiture, devolution of title by adverse possession, you cannot file a suit on title. Title obtained by adverse possession by section 27, extinguishment of title. Therefore, likewise, I think there can be cases where a declaratory suit could be filed. Not in all cases, but there may be cases where it could be filed. That is my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Ramkumar, sir. Jayman Andrews.
Oh, excellent. I am not, in fact, I am not asking anything. It was just one thought I am sharing. Suppose in the Malaysian flight, the issues like Malaysian flights disappeared.
Kairali.
Sir, so see, even why should we wait for 7 years? Because so I don't know what is the law on that. So whether whether they are, suppose an Indian was traveling in that, what will be the law on that? So whether a suit for whether we have to wait for 7 years, whether we have to, I'm just asking a doubt. Whether we can straight away, whether a declaration by court is required or government themselves can declare that they are all died. So what is it?
Finished.
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering.
Sir,
Sir, Virupaksha sir. Okay, Murthy sir. Yeah.
in such cases, what happens is the airport authorities give a certificate, sir, stating that who have taken the boarding passes and boarded the flight, and who are all not traced. That is valid evidence in the court of law to say that that particular person has boarded the flight and later the flight was has disappeared and nobody was traced. Therefore, a presumption of death arises the moment the certificate is produced. There need not be a waiting period, is my humble opinion.
Thank you, sir. Justice
Then,
P.S. Narayana sir.
our aviation expert may be.
Yeah,
Maybe he can solve what they are normally doing all these things.
we will come to that, Jayman sir. In the meanwhile, may I just request the comments of Justice P.S. Narayana sir also. Sir.
This name of the advocate, Virupaksha,
My lord.
it is an excellent name. We very rarely come across the name Virupaksha. Except in the context of Vijayanagara Empire and the rulers and all that. This Lord Virupaksha is a very rare name. After seeing the name only, I thought of just following. Apart from it, the topic chosen also is a novel topic. Why you thought of these provisions in the context of Section 34 Specific Relief Act? It is also very interesting. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Vijay.
Sir, very well spoken. When I was told that Virupaksha Gowda would be speaking, then I was asked, do you know this individual? I said, I mean, recognize him by face, but not by name. Because we are all in a COVID times, we don't know each other now. So now I saw him, I thought, oh, he's the chap who is Virupaksha. So I gave him a name to his face now. Because we meet in the corridors of Amaravati High Court. So, sir, very well spoken. For all these things we see in corridors, I never knew that you had such a wonderful depth of knowledge of this particular, such a beautiful analysis of this subject. And as regards this issue of declaration, I just was death can only be a cause of action. The presumption of death can only be a cause of action for a consequential right. Death per se cannot be a declaration which can be sought. Because it can be only because death is a cause of action. It can be there in the cause of action chapter, but can't be a relief which can be granted. And as regards compassionate appointments, because I do service law also, because of so many parameters which they have now, they have got granted fixed certain point system, point table is there, just like the IPL table. They have a points table now with regard to various parameters of the status of the family. Now that normal time period itself will take 7 years now. We need not wait for anyway the presumption will happen by the time the actual appointment comes into play. Because if you were to, that particular judgment of Supreme Court is only an isolated judgment. It is not regularly followed in the tribunals also, with all due respect. And as regards the death with regard to the doubt posed by Mr. Jayman, the death in the 114 is a presumption. See, something like the accidents which happen. This is only a positive proof which has to be proved by persons who are claiming a consequential right under 108. Somebody who, but in the natural course of events, the presumption, if you were to see under 114, in the natural course of events, court can take into cognizance of certain line of events which have happened, which have presumed the death of an individual. See, that is what, as your Lordship Ram Kumar has pointed out, 108 does not restrain the power to take a presumption of death under 114. 7-year period is not absolute mandatory. 7 years is only in case where the individual is missing without any trace of his whereabouts. But if there are links which are traceable to a certain line of action and which the court can presume a death, then 7-year period is not an absolute one. And as regards Virupaksha, Virupaksha temple is a famous temple in Hampi. Virupaksha temple is a very famous temple in Hampi. It is the place where first people go to in Hampi. It's a beautiful place. Thank you, sir. Very well spoken.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Dr. Badrinath also with us, sir. Can you please unmute? You'll have to unmute, sir. You are still in the mute.
It's good evening now. I'm late. I'm struck because of some unavoidable work today, which normally never happened, but it happened today. I've extended my work. And the result is I missed the benefit of listening to today's speaker, Sri Virupaksha D. Gowda, and Sri Justice Sitaramurthy Garu, and many others. I'm totally lost in touch with this subject, being immersed more on this RDDB and surface eye. But one doubt, maybe I don't know how worth it is to put. Now, a reading of 108 of the Evidence Act, it is only, it suggests a presumption can be drawn as to death after the lapse of that period prescribed. So it is a rebuttable presumption. Now, in a case where a plaintiff sues and then the defendant fails to contest it, remains ex parte, what amount of burden that would lie? Is it that automatically the presumption, because it is for the defendant who is opposing the plea of the plaintiff that somebody is not dead to prove it. If he fails, let us say he remains ex parte, if he fails, that's a matter of merits. But if he remains simply ex parte, is it automatic that the presumption should survive, or something more is required to be done? I think.
I didn't follow.
Then
Yeah, please.
preponderance of probabilities should not.
That's all.
Condoms.
Or, right. Then it would be, in many cases, there may not be a contest. It's just a formal filing of a claim in that aspect. Only when contest arises. Is that?
Unless it is collusive.
Of course, those parameters will necessarily be taken into account. That's right.
Mr. Badrinath, sir.
Sir.
Halsbury's Laws of England.
Yes.
Halsbury's Laws of England. There is a lot of discussion on these two sections. If these books are available, they are available in the AP Judicial Academy in Hyderabad, Telangana Judicial Academy now.
Yes.
They talk about the non-availability of legal presumption, either that a person concerned was alive up to the end of the period of not less than 7 years, or that he died at any particular point of time during such period. The only presumption being that he was dead at the time the question arose.
If question arose.
If he has not been heard of during the preceding 7 years, if it is necessary to establish that a person died at any particular date within the period of 7 years, this must be proved as a fact by evidence. That is what the Halsbury's Laws of Evidence after the analysis of cases says.
All right. So it requires a proof.
Yes, sir.
So that's why even an ex parte judgment can be on merits.
Yes, sir. Always.
So something akin to that, something has to be established, notwithstanding.
Presumption is always an inference based on known or proved facts. Without an admission of fact or a proof of a fact which is necessary to try presumption, there cannot be a presumption. And once evidence is adduced, presumption does not apply because the true nature of the fact must be decided on the evidence. The presumption pales into insignificance.
Wonderful. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have KVJ Rao, sir, please.
Yes, sir. Like I will take it one step further than Justice Murthy. The boarding card that we talk of, but whereas international flights, we have the immigration cards. Then we also have a passenger list. We have all these documents. Like we lost our father of nuclear science, Homi Bhabha, in 1966. Till today, we are finding debris of that aircraft because the aircraft crashed on the Mont Blanc mountains, which are snow-clad 365 days of the year. So it is deemed that the impact, actually, Calicut is what we should say is a very good thing that we didn't have many casualties because the aircraft landed properly. But if it doesn't, then we only have to go by this preponderance that he boarded the flight, he cleared the immigration, so he's deemed to be on that flight and death occurred on that flight. Like Air India has had 3 crashes. One was the or 2 on the Mont Blanc mountains in the bordering France, and one is the Kanishka which crashed near Cock Island before London. Like the impact of the aircraft is such because force into mass into acceleration and gravity, getting bodies or even to identify them will be, it is beyond, you will not even be able to imagine the state of those bodies. Second thing is when the aircraft crashes into the sea, as happened on New Year in Bombay, the bodies were eaten up by the fishes. So identifying them or anything would be, it's not possible. So we go by the probability that yes, he's cleared immigration, the passport numbers are there, the aircraft is like the debris, like Mohan sir said about MH30. Today we are not even finding debris of that aircraft. So we really don't know where that is. Whereas Air India crashes, we have found the debris. So we go by the presumption that if this is the debris, the death has occurred there. So we don't wait for that 7-year period. Like I have a colleague of mine who unfortunately lost his whole family in the 84 crash of Kanishka. So we immediately was given a job on compassionate grounds. So this is how it is. Like if we wait for 7 years, then it will not be possible. Like we do rescue to get debris or to get we actually do deep sea diving to get these equipment, the recorders, digital voice recorders, to only ascertain why the crash took place. 84 for us was a crash because of those things, So this is how it is normally done in the aviation circles.
Excellent, sir.
So, Mr. Rao,
Yes, sir.
this Bermuda Triangle a myth or a reality? Bermuda Triangle.
We can keep on discussing about it, sir. But there are theories that are propounded and by the American pilots, more so by the American pilots, because who crossed it during the Japanese War. So this is a myth that is, whether it's a myth or a reality, till today nobody is able to actually decipher. There are a number of books written on it, and we study those books where ships are missing, the aircrafts are missing. So in a general law, the latitude and longitude of the Bermuda Triangle is avoided by all modes of transport. So that is how it is, sir.
Sir, every
Even aerial.
ticket price so far as airlines is concerned covers insurance also.
Yes, sir.
Insurance claim is settled is an added fact to come to conclusion that there is a death.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
But unfortunately, I think the air crash is a limited liability. Is there in the aircraft 7 lakhs or so?
No, Vijay sir, it all depends on the international travel. Like for us, take us crew, we are insured for 1 crore or SAR 1,30,000. That is the insurance terms for it.
No, that is only in respect of the crew. So the passengers are concerned, it depends upon the premium it appears. We can
no, sir. The airline also pays a premium for the passengers traveling, sir. There is a
no, that is what Vijay says. As far as the passengers are concerned, the liability is limited, it appears.
Yes, it is limited. But then if you go by the latest judgment of the Supreme Court, they now say that the insurance will be paid according to the earning capacity or the last earning capacity multiplied by the number of times. The multiplier effect.
No, because the policy says that there is no liability. Limited liability is not there. But as far as the aircraft is concerned, I think the aircraft people are only limiting per passenger so much amount is being fixed, it appears. Because earlier in the Motor Vehicles Act also, there was a limited policy, limited coverage was there for passengers.
No,
and also per accident. Now as per the Motor Vehicles Act, that clause has been taken away. So whatever liability incurred has come. So that is not. I don't know. I don't know what is how the insurance policy is being taken by the aircraft people.
So we just won one case 4 months back for the Mangalore crash, where the multiplier effect for the insurance was given by the Honorable Supreme Court. Yashwant Shenoy, who is also an activist, and he's got a foundation, 812 Foundation, named after the crash, Mangalore crash, and he is able to get the maximum amount of insurance which the insurance company was denying at that point of time, sir. So this is the aspect on aviation field as far as the thing is concerned.
We do not know what is the nature of contention taken, what is the nature of policy, etc.
Yes, 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 sir. There are a lot of factors to that. That I agree with you,
That
sir.
depends.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sham, you have muted yourself. Sham, you have muted yourself.
Sham has gone silent.
I was just wondering, nobody's listening to me. Okay. Thank you, thank you. I was saying, yes, Dilip sir, and nobody was even Thank you. Dilip, over to you.
Thank you, Shyam sir. Thanks for the well articulated answer, sir. And I'm very much obliged to hear you in detail on these aspects. Now, regarding my queries with regard to not as if asked by others, it is on a different footing. Sections 101 to 114 of Evidence Act generally and presumptions under section 107 and 108 in particular are regarding burden of proof, and hence only rules of procedure and are applicable only where the dispute is in season of a law, court of law. The corollary is that no other authority can draw such presumption or take any action, and the rights of the legal heirs would be settled in their favor. For example, amount standing in a bank account will be settled by the nominee or the legal heir where there is no nomination. For such other matters, where any right that may ensue to the legal heirs upon the death of a person, which is not at all in dispute, there should be some competent document asserting that the person is dead, at least in the eye of law. So it is necessary that for any step to enforce such substantive right by the legal heir, a finding of the court as to presumption of the death by a court is inevitable. So what else the legal heir is required other than approach the court and seek a declaration?
That alone seems to be the remedy.
Yes, then if it is said that no declaration can be given or can be sought in a court of law, just to declare a person that he is presumed to be dead.
But banks may get a discharge if there is a nomination, because in the hands of the nominee, the amount is subject to all legitimate claims. But nominee can only walk away. He cannot walk away with the money. Nominee can only collect it from the bank.
Yes.
In the hands of the nominee, it is subject to all legal claims.
For that also, there has to be some evidence as to death.
Exactly.
Showing that. So this is a practical difficulty where everyone gets confounded.
Even for legal heirship certificate, you have to produce death certificate.
Death certificate.
Yes. So unless there is any source of information as to how he died and where he died. So I think the section 34 is to be applied and a declaratory suit is maintainable. Even though there is no dispute as to whether he was known or he was heard for, or he was heard during the last 30 years, or he was unheard in the last 7 years.
And the bank can be a respondent.
Yes. No, only when, see, for that also, he has to, the bank, the person has to approach the court. If it is a blanket ban on identity, saying that no suit for declaration can be filed.
Yes, yes.
Virubhakar sir, I mean, the question hinges on one aspect also. Section 34 wording is any person entitled to any legal character.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the plaintiff should be entitled to a legal character.
So that means by living person in respect to himself.
Legal
not
heir
others.
of the deceased person.
Exactly. Yes.
Legal
That
character
was
or right in property. So supposing the plaintiff is the only heir of the person missing, he can say that I am the absolute owner of the property in view of the presumption of death of the missing person.
So he can ask for a declaration that X is dead and consequential reliefs.
Yes.
Yes.
That is only a cause of action.
That's only a cause of action. That's why. See, for nobody contesting his claim, he has to approach the court.
Sir, may I draw the attention of all the participants to 104?
104, sir.
Former fact to be proved so that to succeed on the latter fact.
Yes.
Yes.
See, unless a legal right is to be established, the former fact of death is to be proved.
That is the introductory fact.
104 is having any role play here?
No, section 101 charts with burden of proof. whoever desires any court to give a judgment.
Correct.
So without the intervention of the court, none of these provisions can be applied.
Yes, yes. And
So 104 is the burden of proving any fact necessary to be proved in order to enable any person to give evidence of any other fact is on the person who wishes to give such
that
evidence.
is the introductory fact. Introductory fact.
If he wants compassionate appointment, that is the latter fact. For that, he has to
Correct.
prove that the employee died. That is the
Yes.
former fact.
Yeah, sir, illustration A itself is very good. A wishes to prove a dying declaration by B. A must prove B's death.
Yes.
Second illustration also. Second also.
A wishes to prove by secondary evidence the contents of a lost document. A must prove that the document has been lost.
Original has been lost.
Correct.
So, but everything can be established only in a court.
Exactly. And very often institutions like banks will insist on a suit,
That's
a declaratory suit.
yes, yes. At least
Correct. Sir, we have a question, the last question, I believe, from Pradeep Kumar. Pradeep, can you unmute and put the question?
Sir, I thank you for a wonderful session. And sir, I have one doubt. Suppose if a person leaves the house after after some quarrel, and later on he is not heard of after 10 years or 15 years.
Yes.
Then his LIC policies and all his properties have been divided and taken by the sons, etc. And then he reappears after. So what would have been his status? Whether he has to start from the scratch or legal battle to regain the property, because once he is turned out, then how his people will approach him, that is all very much concerned, sir. Because nowadays, even the children, now I am conducting a case where one 84-year-old person have distributed his 7 acres of land to his children, and now he's not been taken care of, and he's not even interested to even claim for a maintenance to his children against his children also. I'm just dealing. So I just wanted to know what would be the effect.
On a lighter vein, he will have to continue to be absconding or commit suicide.
No, or he will have to file another suit and declare that I am alive.
That of course. And Pradeep sir, this person, the old man, he should be thankful that he did not disappear for 7 years. Others would have made him disappear after getting all the amount.
But the beneficiary, see.
Yeah, in general, I am asking, suppose if a person reappears, and what would have been his status? Because nowadays, even old age homes are coming home, and even they become luggages. Old people become luggages to the children nowadays. So what would have been the condition of the property, of the money that he saved, and everything has been lost? And what would have been
the beneficiaries may not be the only persons who would have naturally heard of him had he been alive. There may be other friends who are, and other relatives who are not beneficiary, not the heir apparent. Such persons also would have heard of him. Therefore, the beneficiaries will definitely have to file a suit for declaration. And in that
Ramkumar sir, this question is that the dead person reappears. The dead person,
exactly.
the person declared to be dead reappears.
By that time,
declaratory suit.
See, by that time, the wife and children have taken his properties, enjoyed his property. For that, will they not be able to file a suit?
He has to file a suit.
No, he will have to file a suit that I am alive. So whatever decree passed is not
he. Before claiming his properties, the so-called survivors will have to file a suit.
Sir, the question is that already he is declared dead and survivors got it. The declared person reappears.
That is what I am saying. In that suit, who are the respondents?
In the second
normally the state government will be
there should have been a publication. There should have been a publication there would have been other relatives who are not heir apparents, but who would have heard of him had he been alive. Not merely his wife and children.
Sir, I
Those
presume
persons-
that all these procedures were done and a proper declaration has been given by the court. Then what?
Then the other alternative mentioned by me.
You'll have to file another suit saying that I am still alive, declare that I am alive. Whatever decree passed is null and void.
With what result? With what
Whether
result?
he has to start from the scratch or again, he has to go to the old age homes where the service people are taken care of, whether he can take hold of the property.
No, then one thing in a lighter way, in our Indian scenario, as in the criminal cases, the legal heirs will say you are not that person. Then he will have to prove he is that person.
Very true. I think first of all, to answer this individual, I think first of all he has to file a suit to get the other suit declared as a nullity.
Yes, other decree resigned.
The other decree as a nullity, then consequentially declare him as that he is the same person who is alive. Then the rights which flow from the first decree will be annulled. And once he is declared as...
But it is not obtained by fraud or something.
It is not a question of fraud.
It's only by way of
a presumption that it has been done. That's all.
It's only a presumption. That's only a rebuttable presumption.
Yes.
Because
rebuttal comes in this way. Why he is coming alive.
True. This becomes the legal character which the 34 speaks of.
So just like in one of Suresh Gopi's case, cinema, he said that somebody is dead and case was said and ultimately conviction. Before conviction, he entered and said, see, I want only this to be projected as a case only because in another case, when I insisted for a reinvestigation, you said that already evidence is there, that so we have no other option. This may be possible.
Correct. Murthy sir wanted to add something. Murthy sir, please.
Under the Hindu law, there are cases, in such cases of presumable death, parties must wait for 12 years. Under Hanafi law, the period is 30 years. Whether not take override the personal law,
yes,
that is an important aspect which has to be gone into. Because the adverse possession comes after 12 years only.
No, but I think there are rulings to the effect that 107 and 108 override the personal laws. The Hindu law and the Muslim law.
But when we see Succession Act Section 4, which it gives an overriding effect over other provisions. It also has to be examined. Overriding effect of the Act Section 4. Yes, sir. So whether 12 years is the waiting period or 7 years or Janafila years is the waiting period, it's a more
waiting period really.
It is better that 107 continues.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I think we can go to Prem. Prem, please.
Well, as everybody said, it was a really nice lecture, nice talk. And of course, what the speaker of the day has pointed out, he referred to a Calcutta decision. I think it's a 1916 Calcutta decision which he referred to. See, right during 1912 also, there's another Calcutta decision which said that the then section 42, which was an inverbatim reproduction of, section 34, which we have now in the specific relief act, that's an exact replica of section 42 of the 1877 specific relief act. Now, of course, it did not sanction every form of declaration. True. Then you had the 1916 Privy Council judgment, page 78, Shio Parson Singh's. Again, it would say that section 42 does not warrant every kind of declaration. Then you can see there is a Supreme Court judgment, AER 1967 Supreme Court 436, which of course dealt with section 42 of the 1877 Act, which corresponds to section 34 of the present Act. But the Supreme Court goes on to say that section 42, that is the corresponding section 34 of the present Act, it is not exhaustive, and the courts can grant declaratory reliefs irrespective and independent of this particular section. This is a Supreme Court judgment. So we cannot say that a suit for declaration won't lie. Suit for declaration can lie. It may not be under section 34. If you have a Supreme Court judgment, when Supreme Court says that 34, it is not exhaustive and independent of this particular section, courts can grant the declaratory relief. And this particular judgment that was based upon Lord Denning's observation in a Pixgrides case of 1958, 1 Queensbench 554. So even though section 34 would provide that a person can sue for his legal character, but apart and independent of this particular section 34, I think a declaration would lie, because it is independent of section 34. Not merely by section 34, you cannot tie down that it's a legal character. I think what is your take outside section 34? And see, even if we can see section 107 and 108, if you have a very close look on the section, just see how wisely the legislature, the draftsman have put that words. Section 107 says when it is shown. 108 goes, which is a proviso to section 107. It says instead of the word shown, it is proved. You can see from the section how wisely they have drafted that section also. Anyway, it was a nice talk, absolutely wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
So, sir, P.S. Narayana, sir, you wanted to add something? Sir,
whatever it is, as already I had stated, the topic chosen is an excellent topic. How this came to your mind, it is really appreciable. It is a very, very interesting topic.
Thank you.
And Murthy was able to explain several facets very well. Something excellent.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Golden to your
And Murthy, sir, thank you. So as we come to the end of the 142nd session, Virubakshi, sir, you wanted to add something? Okay. We come to the 142nd second. Tomorrow we will be dissecting another very important section. That too was on account of the deliberations and discussions that was initiated by Justice Ramana sir last time. Tomorrow we will be dissecting section 112 and the classic debate between paternity, legitimacy, and the very, very purpose. I mean, does 112 have any significance in the new, when the technological and scientific advancements can for sure tell you who your biological father is? All those things we'll discuss tomorrow, and leading the deliberations would be leading the deliberations and discussions would be Justice Abraham Matthews sir, and we have Justice Nagamuthu sir has agreed to join, and I am sure that all of you will be there as active participants in tomorrow's deliberation, which will be at 4:30 tomorrow evening. We'll be exclusively dealing with section 112 alone of the Evidence Act. And as far as today's session was concerned, again, we'd like to thank Justice Ramana for introducing this wonderful speaker to this platform, Viruvaksha sir. It was indeed wonderful, and I would 100% concur with whatever Justice Siddharama Murthy sir said, that the way in which the subject was dealt with, starting from why this 7 and 7 years and all those nuances. It was just wonderful, sir. And
no, Mr. Viruvakshan, I wanted that the text of that decision of Justice Ramasubramanian.
Allahabad High Court. Allahabad High Court.
I will send it to you, sir.
Andhra law decision. Yes.
Yeah, correct.
That is Polymeta Mary Sarojini, right?
No, can we get the text of that decision?
Yeah,
yes, soft copy can be sent.
Okay. I will send the WhatsApp, Mr.
Correct.
I will send the PowerPoint to your WhatsApp.
That is 2017 3 ALD 285.
No, we don't have. I
think India Kanun will have everything.
Correct, sir.
2017 3 ALD 285, Union of India versus Polymetla Mary Sarojini.
I am not techno savvy, basically.
Sir, we'll see to that you are made savvy and you will have the copy.
Thank you. That is enough. Don't make me savvy.
No, you are savvy, sir. You are very savvy.
Thank you, Vijay. And thank you, Justice Ramkumar sir, Ramakrishnan sir, P.S. Narayana sir, and all of you wonderful participants for making this session so interactive and empowering to all of us. And till we meet again tomorrow with incisive and very in-depth analysis of section 112. Till then, please do take care and stay safe. Thank you once again.